considering approval of the minutes from our March 5th meeting of this year. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Mr. Gisselman, right second. Mr. Peckham. Any changes, alterations, questions? Mr. Peckham.
One small one. They're on toward the end, second to last paragraph. It says Peckham asked if the normal audited report was $10,000, and it should say, I've given this to Tara already, should say Peckham asked if the cost of the normal audited report was $10,000. With that change, we're golden.
Okay. All right. Any other changes, questions? Hearing none, all in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None are opposed. Thank you. Second item of business regarding the murals at Wow. I don't know that we have anybody here yet associated with that effort, so I'm just going to hold that back pending maybe their arrival or addressing it at a different meeting. Moving on to number 3, discussion and possible action on the acquisition of the property at 2101 Grand Avenue, the erstwhile Ponderosa. Mr. Schock.
Sure. So just to present some update on the process. As you perhaps know, this property has been examined by the county for foreclosure, and the county is in the process, has been in the process of acquiring the site through the foreclosure process, which is not a short process, but during that process, the city has expressed interest in assisting, with its redevelopment as we normally would. The city has a long history of working with properties once they've been in the foreclosure process to reposition them and redevelop them. So the Ponderosa site obviously is one of concern and strategic nature on Grand Avenue. So we've had some dialogue on that. There's a couple ways to recommend moving forward with it. Recently, the Community Development Authority has created a new redevelopment committee, and that committee has expressed interest in, looking at this proposal specifically and working with the county cooperatively to look at acquiring that site. As many of you know, over the years, the CDA has acquired certain sites within the city from a redevelopment perspective. Oftentimes the city directly acquires property. There's not necessarily a direct a reason why one organization would be the lead on the redevelopment, but it seems to fit especially well with the CDA's mission. So from a staff perspective, we recommend that the city allow the CDA redevelopment committee and the CDA board to lead that process in this example or this case, and work with the county to figure out a plan going forward.
Good evening, Ms. Rasmussen. Let the record show that all the Rasmussen's are here. We have skipped item 2 on the agenda for now, the murals question.
Okay.
Because we don't have representatives on that, so we're
Move
on
up
the
to
Ponderosa. Yeah.
Okay.
So, Mr. Schock, first question: if this CDA board would be considering this, is there an inkling of an end in sight, an end use in sight for it, or strictly just as an opportunity, open-ended?
I think it would generally be open-ended. Usually, obviously be marketable for a commercial use given its location, and it would likely be marketable for some kind of multifamily or other use as well. So I think that'll be the work of that group, obviously.
Is there anything about the property that might preclude it being deemed palatable to somebody, based on its size, footprint, shape, location, anything of that sort?
I don't think there's anything too an outlier or anything in certain ways. It's not a huge parcel, but big enough to do a variety of things on it. We have done the environmental assessment on the property and, have no concerns on that issue. So it may be torn down or redeveloped. I think the kind of going thought is that it would likely be torn down, but we would examine opportunities to reuse it, perhaps, if there was interest in that.
Okay. Ms. Rasmussen?
Thank you. I guess I have a couple questions on this proposal. When I first heard that, the county wanted us to take over and take the lead on the redevelopment of the Ponderosa, I guess I was not a fan of that idea. I think, it seems like oftentimes when the private sector either lets a property decay or it burns and they don't have the right insurance or whatever happens, all of a sudden it becomes the city's responsibility to take the property and figure out what to do with it. And while we own it, it's off the tax rolls. I mean, granted, this parcel didn't pay its taxes anyway, but I guess I just don't see why we should accept the responsibility to acquire the property for the unpaid taxes from Marathon County. If they want that raised and they want it turned into something, then maybe they need to deed it over to us for free or something, but I just can't see covering someone else's obligation. We have no idea what that property could be. Many buildings in that corridor need attention. Is it blighted? Sure, but at the end of the day, there's no tax generating project even on the horizon for it. And even if we offered it up for RFP, it's on a high traffic street, but nobody wants that building. No one has wanted that building all along. Since the fire, there's not been a use. And, many times I think that the surrounding neighborhood wants to complain that nothing's happening with that building, but I don't know that it's our job to make something happen. I think that the private sector should figure out what the market use for that building is, and I don't know, I just don't feel like it's our job to take care of the Ponderosa.
Sure. Yeah, just to clarify, so we were recommending that the CDA board be the conduit or be the entity to review and work with the county to determine the acquisition costs and steps forward. Just to but.
Right, but whether it's a cost to the city or whether it's a cost to the CDA,
just to clarify.
Is it even a necessary cost, though? I guess that's the question I have at the end of the day, is whose responsibility is it to redevelop Ponderosa? Who should it be? And do you even want to be in that position? Because that is it's not a highly sought after location. And, I guess I don't see the value. A few years ago, just as an example, we're in the process of redesigning the UK 51 corridor and some of the parcels that are adjacent to that. We had the opportunity to buy the old brick soft serve and develop that into something, and we decided that was not our place either. Because that building, while it had some challenges on the site, wasn't our job to fix. They moved, buildings up for sale, whatever it becomes, it becomes. But the private sector needs to dictate what it becomes and when. And this is kind of that same thing. The building burned, it's an eyesore, yes, but I can't imagine why the CDA would even want to be in the position of having to figure out what that's going to be. And if the county didn't get its tax money, that's on the prior owner. I have a negative view of that, of anybody owning that, public ownership of that property.
I have found myself leaning in the direction of Alder Rasmussen on this too. It just seems like taking on something that we don't really have a need to take on prior to it maybe being addressed by the private sector. So somebody else from the committee had their hand up. Mr. Peck?
Yes, thank you. The residents of that neighborhood are pretty solidly behind the acquisition. They want that building gone. It's ugly, detracts from that corridor, and I think it makes the surrounding property less attractive. I am not totally discounting the points that have been made here earlier, but I think if we step up, we have done a service by moving this thing closer to where it's going to be back on the tax rolls, which is where we want it. Hasn't been attractive to a purchaser, partially because the whole building and all the mess was still sitting there, but now it's been checked for contamination, environmental, liabilities and stuff like that. And I think if we want to guarantee that it's still there in 5 years, then we do nothing. So let's not do that.
Mr. Gisselman, did I see you?
Or just to answer, but to answer Lisa's concerns as well, is that I think those are all valid concerns. Obviously the city would normally get involved with a problem property when the market isn't addressing it. That should be, and that's usually our history of getting involved with projects where there is a market imperfection, and for whatever reason, it's unable to, be redeveloped. We do have, resources, kind of unique to the city, block grant and other funds, which could be used to improve the property for its marketability, which maybe, those are ways to kind of, to see it forward. It's something we've done before, at various different sites, whether it be Marathon Rubber or, lots of different properties. And tonight we're talking about the future of the Woodworkers Mart on 2nd Street, so there's, a variety of properties that are, in that situation where either because of ownership or the challenge in renovating the property or environmental concerns or other issues, there's extenuating circumstances, So the tax issue is an extenuating circumstance. Obviously, the burned out building is an extenuating circumstance. What is the balance or appropriate nature of city participation on it is a valid debate, and I guess what we're saying is, from a staff perspective or from an administration perspective, we think the CDA is well suited to kind of debate that and then take it on. The CDA does have redevelopment monies available that they could use to work with the county in that regard. Those monies aren't coming out of the tax roll, if you will, and so they would could in theory be used for that purpose if that board decides to move it forward, and they may not as well. We're just suggesting tonight that our recommendation would be that they take a shot at it.
I would make that motion if there's not one on the floor. I don't think there is one, but I would move that the Economic Development Committee ask the Community Redevelopment Authority to take a serious look at acquiring and making this property more attractive for private development.
Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, and you have more to add, Mr. Gisselman?
Well, in fact, I think that somebody should be looking at this. I think that it is on a major feeder into the city, and I'm not sure what the CDA or how we proceed with that, but I think that at least this is on a major thoroughfare in the city, and I think we need to seriously look at it. I know that in that neighborhood there are several other empty buildings that may need attention, but I think that this is perhaps one building that really does distract really from the whole, from I think the image that that the city wants to portray through its Grand Avenue, and I think that so I would be in support of this.
Very good. Just for everybody's edification, is a policy of our committee, most committees I think, to welcome public comment on items on the agenda as they are discussed, and we also do that. I have a hand up from Ms. Ryan. I welcome her to the podium to ask a question. Caution that we do not want to get into a protracted discussion with the committee. We just, if there's something that you need to say about this item, we welcome that. Thank
If
you.
Ms. Ryan can hold for just 1 second, though, I have just one final question
All right, thank you.
before we get her comment. Really, as far as the Ponderosa building, what is the status on that building with our inspections department? My understanding was that when that building went unrepaired, that they had the ability to apply a razor repair order to it. and take care of that, or at least compel somebody besides the city to knock that down? What's happening there?
So yes, the inspections department has been integral in this process, a part of and meeting with the county treasurer throughout the foreclosure process. The issuance of the raise order can be complicating, with depending on the owner's cooperation and if they're able to assess, whether the structure is deemed 50%, damage beyond repair or not, and that's kind of an assessment process. So, I know that Inspections has been aware of the process. The group, in cooperating with the county, felt that it was not going to be possible to, or not going to be effective or a fast process to issue the raise order, and so they felt it was more imperative to seek the foreclosure process and then seek redevelopment options after that. Hopefully that answers your question.
I guess I'd like to see us, before we take it on or put it on the CDA or whatever, I'd like to see them use the maximum level of their enforcement authority first. I mean, they have that power specifically for that reason, that when stuff is left to sit and rot, that they can go in there and write it up and take care of it through a raise or repair order. Even if that's a court process and it's difficult, I think that they need to at least endeavor to do that work, even if it's hard, because...
Well, I believe they endeavored to do it, and again, I don't want to speak for them specifically, but I do know a little bit about the process, and, again, the administration, was well aware of it, really looked at all the options, discussed the raise and the raise order avenue, and felt that avenue was going to be difficult to effectuate. There's a lot of nuances to that about having access and making a determination and those kind of things, and so we can discuss more, or if you wanted to talk with Bill directly about why this was decided not to go down the raise order avenue. That's always an option. You're correct, and it's a tool in the city's toolbox. Correct. For problem properties, but it's not always maybe the right tool, or not always the possible tool. And there seemingly was a from an administration perspective, I think the staff felt there was an impetus to move it as quickly as possible. The property has been in a kind of shambles state of repair for a while now, and so the protracted raise and repair or raise order process might not be the most efficient. Again, I don't mean to. I think you're correct. There's always a path. It's just the group seemingly decided this was the most efficient path and the best way to kind of move it forward.
It just feels like the efficient path, and it is an efficient path. There's no question about that. But the efficient path is an easy way out for the people that let it go, and for the folks who are in possession of the building now. And I mean, just because something's easy and the city has the ability to make it easy or take care of it, should we be? Is the question at the end of the day.
Yeah,
because this whole thing right along from the day of the fire has been, just an exercise in, and it's not a city failure, but it's a failure. And from a development standpoint, I just don't know that it needs to be our responsibility. I'm just concerned about that.
Mr. Peckham.
Yeah, my understanding of the history on it is that the inspections did order that the building be raised, and that was contested. They thought, and they were going to bring in builders and all that stuff, and there was dithering and differences on, whether it needed to be raised and blah, 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 and eventually I think they, through conversation with the former owners, kind of realized that this was never going to go anywhere, and somebody needed to take it on and get it to where it is today, and they weren't going to get any help or cooperation from the old owners. They just walked away from it and sacked. So
well, and that's the trouble. They walk away from it, and then they're left unaccountable for what they've left sit there. So that's the rub, I guess.
No, I appreciate your frustration. I think it's a shared frustration for everyone. But again, the role of the city is to, have resources to fill or to address those kind of market imperfections. This is a classic example of a market failure, whether that be the owner's fault or whatever the situation is. And, as Gary had said, there's a variety of properties on Grand Avenue that are in various states of kind of conditions, and that's something that we're paying very close attention to because when there is a challenged area, we obviously view it as our mission as a redevelopment focused organization to look at what tools we can deploy, whether it be the raised tools or the acquisition tools, and that's I think what brought us to this point, at least today.
Okay, Ms. Rasmussen, or rather Ms. Ryan, please give us your name, address, and limit your comment to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Deborah Ryan, 702 Elm Street. Being a former HUD housing counselor here in Wausau, I was familiar with the Ponderosa back over 15 years ago as being alternative emergency housing for families in need of housing. And one thing you seem to forget is that this motel was single occupancy housing, which had families living there on a fixed income with all the utilities included. And I recently met one of the families that was affected by the fire and did not get any reimbursement, did not get any assistance in having to make those move, even though I would think this would have been in a TIF district, and that was something that the city should have been looking at, how to help them move. You forget, and I guess I've inquired recently again of the United Way and Ms. United Way Homeless, how many single occupancy rooms are there in our area? There are hundreds. And some of them were plaza, were used temporarily for NTC housing. Motel 8 has been used. The Excel Inn on 17th Avenue. Ponderosa has been used. The ones on Scott Street have been used as single room occupancy. And there's more than you see as well going towards Rothschild and Weston. No one seems to be knowing how many of these are and keeping track of them that are families on a fixed income with utilities included in their room and all furnishings that can't afford market rate housing. And what are you doing about it? And the vehicle is the Community Development Authority. They should be looking at affordable housing and looking how to make more affordable housing for those that are on the low income scale. I realize you probably are going to hope for a hotel that would be in that area so to help with the different events, but I would like to see a promise from the city that there be at least a 1-for-1 or maybe 5-to-1 of other affordable housing that will be done in its place. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anything else from the committee? On our agenda, the agenda item says discussion and possible action on the acquisition of the property. I'm concerned about having it look as though our committee voted in favor of acquisition. I'm not entirely sure that we are an authority over the CDA, and if they wish on their own to look at this property and talk to the owner and come up with a proposal for the city to consider, that's fine. I feel uncomfortable to have the committee saying, sure, yes, let's acquire it, and we've approved it, and let's go. I think that's putting the cart before the horse. I'd like to see things take a more natural turn of events before we do that. So, Mr. Peckham.
I'm all in favor of that, and I could clarify my motion to specify that we are just asking the Community Redevelopment Authority?
This Community Development Authority.
To examine it and perhaps bring us back a proposal if they think one is warranted.
So, yeah, just to clarify, it wouldn't come through council. The board of the CDA could authorize its own actions.
So really, this is a question of our interest as the city to acquire it ourselves, per se. And I think that our real vote here is on acquisition on the part of the city. And I think that's what we are talking about, and which I'm opposing at this point.
It
Yeah,
seems to me that if our goal is to let the CDA take a look at it, they can do that on their own without a referral from us. We don't even need to act.
correct. There's no action required. It's just but Pat made a motion to recommend. It's not out of the question, but it's not required.
Okay, Mr. Disselman, you had your hand up.
Well, then I think Pat's motion is pretty much to refer to the Community Development Authority. I think that's the gist of my second.
Okay.
So,
Just
I think that you're right, we don't necessarily need a motion or any action by this committee, but I think that's sort of a courtesy to this committee and, to move this over to them and see what they can do with it.
Well, motion's been made and it's been seconded. I don't mind voting on it just to show CDA that we've considered it and we've bowed to them to take a kick at it if they want. So, any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
okay.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, motion passed. Correct?
Yes. Number 4, discussion and possible action on the proposal received for the properties at 1940 North 2nd Street and 2001 North 2nd Street, Wausau Chemical Properties.
Great. So this evening we welcome Bridge Community Clinic, who has made a proposal to the city and to the CDA board simultaneously to assemble a series of parcels in the area at the corner of 2nd Street and Wausau Avenue to facilitate a new project. This would be a major expansion to their existing clinic operations, community space, and a consolidation and expansion of their garden operations and some shared parking facilities. So we have been working collaboratively with British Community for quite some time now in looking at this area, looking at their future growth needs, and examining some of these kind of parcels. As you might recall, 2 of these parcels are part of the relocation of Wausau Chemical, so they are kind of a part of that development agreement. It would be subject, of course, to their approval and timing, but we would the city would eventually own 2 of those parcels. And as I mentioned earlier, the Woodworker Smart, what it's often called, the building at the corner of Wausau and 2nd across from Thrive, is owned by the CDA and has been owned by the CDA for quite some time now. And the CDA went through a RFP process, for the sale or redevelopment of that property, and Bridge Community had expressed interest at that time. The CDA board gave Bridge Community time, many months, to assemble kind of the broader plan, because it does involve the assembly of various lots. So that's I think that gives an overview, hopefully, a little bit. I'd welcome the representatives of Bridge Community to come forward, perhaps, and we'll put up their information here. They could talk a little bit about how they've come to this junction tonight.
Great.
Thank you. Just welcome, and just give us your name and address, please.
Sure, thank you. I'm Jen Smith, and my address is 3311 North 10th Street in Wausau. And I am Jen Smith. I'm the Executive Director of Bridge Community Health Clinic. I've been at the clinic for over 6 years. Wally Binder from Binder Gadorzi is joining me as well, and has provided some of the visuals for our discussion tonight. As Chris mentioned, we have been in conversation for a number of years about what the future of our clinic space looks like. The clinic was built in '95 as a small medical clinic, and it has added on over the years. The most recent acquisition of property was immediately to the north to do a very large dental expansion with some grant funding in 2013. So we are at a point in our history where we are looking at several needs. One is our physical space in our current medical department is not at all suited for integrated care. And integrated care really looks at how we put together medical care and intersperse that with behavioral health care in the moment for patients. So our physical plant does not allow for that integrated team-based care. We did explore several years ago the option to do some sort of a renovation within its current footprint, and did not receive the grant funds to do that at that time, and really that would have been a Band-Aid measure on where we were going. When we started looking at the Woodworkers Mart, we looked at that knowing that at some point the other properties would transfer to the city with the Wausau chemical relocation. And that is the point at which we began to seriously look at how could we secure all of that land for future campus. Varying needs in the integration project. Our behavioral health program is expanding. We are out of space physically for any future expansion, to the extent that in January we moved our business operations over to a rental property at 6th and Scott and invested dollars there for a temporary measure. But at this point, we have no room to put any other providers or support staff that would support those providers. So since we can't do what we want to do in our physical plant, now we're looking to the north, and have been working in early stages with Binder Gadorzi and also REI in just a feasibility study, which is what we'll look at tonight, of can we do and get the space that we need with the properties if we were to be able to acquire all three. The other need that we have that is playing into this, as you may have seen in the proposal, is our community garden program. So our community garden program has been in existence now for almost 10 years. We do donate out of our community plots that we own between 500 and 1,000 pounds, limited by space at this time, to the Hunger Coalition and the Neighbor's Place. We do beekeeping, and we would like to be able to consolidate those. Our largest garden is right now located across from the Trolley Flats Apartments. That has been on a lease, a very small dollar lease from the city for a number of years, but looking toward the future that at some point that particular parcel may need to be redeveloped, and then we need a future plan for where that space would go. That is our largest garden. So our vision really became, how could we do some future expansion that would lend a nice benefit to that neighborhood, working with Mark McDonald from the Woodchucks and also our partners at Thrive down the street. Our vision became we could expand not only our clinic, but look at some future community space that would be usable by the neighborhood, the community at large, and the clinic. We need space of that sort. Setting up a future outdoor pavilion that could support multiple functions, our own clinic functions. We have a lot of health events that we do and could benefit from that space. The community could use that space. It could host future market opportunities were there ever a need for various, winter markets, summer markets to either come in or relocate. We would satisfy our clinic need for expansion, parking related to that. So that is what we're looking at in terms of that. The other benefit to us is that were we able to do this, we would then renovate the existing medical clinic. We would reserve the current clinic space there for future clinical application, so we wouldn't raise that part. Because to remove clinic space doesn't make a lot of sense and then turn around several years down the road and put it back in. But it would allow us to utilize our business space in a different way, and our lease, when our lease comes due, and move our operations all back on one campus, which would certainly be a benefit to our clinic. So that is what we are proposing.
Very good, thank you. Anybody from the committee have a question? Ms. Rasmussen.
And with regard to the plan as it's designed, what portion, if any of this, land reuse or potential land reuse would pay property tax?
Part of the proposal would be that it all would have tax relief.
Okay.
We wouldn't expect any to pay, yeah, given their status.
Are we agendized for closed session on this item? Okay.
We are.
Yep, good. I'd like to talk about that.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Peckham?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if the expectation today was that we would be able to act on this, because there are a lot of dangling things like how much the property tax relief would involve, what the cost of providing that additional parking, and how much would that cost us, and all that stuff. I mean,
It's up to you, of course, but yeah, we can discuss it
Go
and
today, or?
we can.
Yeah, I think we can go to closed session and direct staff then to answer any questions for us, find out stuff, and reconsider.
And for clarification on the parking, if I may, the largest parking that says new parking right next to the new build, so that's almost in the center of the graphic. Yep, thank you. That is parking that we would be paying for and developing on our own. We would be doing some parking also around that outdoor pavilion. The ask for the additional parking would be if there was an opportunity actually to the north side of East Wausau Avenue for future communal parking. So that's not a have to. Right now, it's a consideration for future. And then looking though at some assistance with installing the parking that would be adjacent to Thrive. And as a matter of course, when we look at the entire project expense, that's the piece that we would significantly struggle to install. But we could certainly look at other options for that in terms of how that care and maintenance happens.
I don't have a good mental image of that spot where it says additional parking and the relocated gardens. Is that at the same or similar ground level as the parking, that area next to Thrive, or is that a raised area?
It is a good question. That lot, which is occupied by the former printing press, is kind of a tilted lot. And so the upper part we would develop to relocate, excuse me, our largest garden on the upper lot. The lower portion of the lot could actually be extended to extend that parking where Thrive is right now quite a ways back. It's almost about half of that lot, would you say? And so that would be an extension to that. Thrive is quite short of parking for their business. About 20 slots is what has been shared with us. So we thought as a benefit it would be nice to be able to develop that space for their use as well as our use to support that outdoor pavilion.
Very good. Well, I'm certainly positively disposed towards this concept myself. We will go into themes into closed session to discuss in particulars. So I would assume coming out of closed that we might be directing staff to secure some more information. So I didn't want to make you sit and wait, for us to come out of closed for not to have found out anything definitive. Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Anything else from the committee on the item, Mr. Peckham?
I would just add, echoing Mr. Neal's comments, I think it is a very impressive proposal that we have before us, and I think it's a real testament to the great job that's being done by all concerned with the clinic. They wouldn't have that space if they didn't perform needed and appreciated services and grow like they have. So it's a real asset to the community, and I hope that we can assist to make this happen.
Very good, thank you. All right, that being said, no action will be taken right away. We will discuss closed session options shortly. Next item, discussion and possible action on a proposal received for the property at 411 Washington Street, what used to be Sears. Mr. Schock.
Yes, so in your packet, obviously, we've received a proposal from a local developer for the acquisition of Sears. As you know, in our many updates over the past couple months, we've been working with a variety of different folks who've expressed interest in Sears. Different ideas about how it could be repositioned or reused in a variety of ways, and this has come to a kind of formal proposal step. I think a representative from Lockery is here. Yeah, Vic, if you want to come up.
If I could just interject, on our packet, on our good reader application, I don't see any particulars about the proposal.
Sorry, hold on.
And if there are supposed to be at least, we need to get that made available to anybody that wants to see it.
Sure, hold on. This is the details, the offer of purchase.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
Very
there's,
good. Let me see, is it?
yeah, I think you'll find it in there somewhere. It's just after the Bridge Community Staff Report. Keep going.
So we have the offer to purchase in the packet, but we have no proposed use or...
Correct. I think they'll discuss tonight what their intentions are about what they plan to do.
Page 37 of 94.
Okay.
Very good, thank you.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Victor Anderson with Lockery Development Company, address 119 Scott Street. It's a letter of intent for the Sears building. Our company's been looking at doing something downtown and helping the city. We've been working with Chris on things and the mayor. And we have a long history of developing downtown Wausau. And I've got a history with the mall. I was the 4th mall manager. So I've got a passion to make things better down there. We really don't have a set plan right now, but we're creatively, we need about 9 months to think through this and try to come up with a plan. So that's a proposal right now.
Yeah, I think
mean, we could
so.
use the building, we could raise the building. It's kind of early stages right now.
Yeah, in there, so you can see there that they're projecting that they would work to redevelop the property or raise the property. If the property is raised and there are a request for tax increment financing resources, the applicant would make a separate application for that and come back to the committee. This would set in motion kind of agreeing or signaling agreement with the letter of interest, signals in motion then a window for them to do that, to do that work, to determine what the scope is going to be, and then obviously a real estate closing would be scheduled, when that's finalized.
There's the outstanding question of the connecting wall, if there is a raising involved, who that would fall upon to address the whether it's recladding of the wall or rebuilding of the wall or what have you. Do we have any information on that?
Yeah, they're just saying that if it's their proposal is saying if it is requires refacing, that would be, that would
Be the city's
be a city, city responsibility, and that's something obviously we've had dialogue with the mall owners as well, as you're aware, and
do we have a feeling from the mall owners, in the event that such a thing happened, what our costs might be to effect that?
We have previous costs, but what I would say is, this sets in motion the process of determining the definitives of that. Negotiating with the mall, determining the actual breakdown of who's going to pay for what and how much that would take, if that's what the recommended use is. We do have some idea from the cinema dialogue about what, kind of what the refacing might entail, because that was analyzed by an architect at that time. But again, I think some of it has to, kind of, would be really determined as we flesh that out.
So effectively, were this to go through, what we'd have is sort of another entity, a private entity, take on the burden that the city has been carrying, and that's not entirely a bad thing. So thoughts from the committee? Ms. Rasmussen.
Thank you. I guess I struggle with this because the sole reason we acquired this Sears building was to make sure that there was a positive and effective reuse, and that positive reuse was to the highest and best value that it could be, and really to have at least some say in the ultimate future of that property and those around it. And I get that we've taken that property off the tax roll, and I know that all along from the time we acquired it, it was the mayor's goal to get it back on the tax roll in a positive way as soon as possible. But that said, I have a hard time divesting ourselves of a building that size that's connected to a public parking structure on a what if. We have no renderings, we have no statement of purpose, we have no idea. I mean, we know that Lockery's team has done some very positive work in our community before, but we don't know what this is going to be. Is it an office? Is it a theater? Is it an apartment? We don't know what it is.
Yeah, just to clarify, I mean, they are providing a 270-day due diligence period to flesh that out. So,
okay, but as soon as we approve the sale and that fleshing out begins, the wheels are in motion. And, what happens if in the 11th hour you decide that plan isn't what you wanted in the middle of your downtown in a building that size tied to your parking ramp? I think that we're too soon. We need more. We need more information as far as what the ultimate reuse of the site is going to be, because
yeah, no, I agree. I think, just to clarify, when a normal process when you're trying to do this kind of real estate acquisition is that someone would have a letter of intent, an offer, so that there's an understanding that if they're going to go out and do these steps, that these are the terms in which they would buy the property. So during this due diligence period, we fully expect to better flesh out the vision for what would go on at the site.
I think that should be fleshed out before you even get here. I mean, we have no idea what the proposal is for this site, what we want it to be.
Again, they're unable to market the site without our motion that we're interested in having it remarketed.
Well, at the end of the day, if we wanted a reuse
purpose.
For the site, we've put that site out to RFP ourselves before.
That's exactly correct. That's another avenue. The city can choose to go down the road of marketing ourselves. I'm just noting that the administration has received this proposal for the developer to do that work and to work on putting together a plan, and that seems to be a reasonable approach. I'm not suggesting that's the only approach. The city can also choose to re-RFP the property as we have in the past, and receive proposals and then review those proposals. But it does seem like this is a very reasonable offer for the property with a long period in which there's going to be a shared process of determining what the use is going to be, and any future application for TIF resources would be made by the applicant. Obviously, you're not committing to those issues.
Well, but it brings responsibility back to the city again, that if there is any raising done on other portions of the mall, that it becomes our responsibility to restore the exposed wall to its pre-demolition state or to an aesthetically pleasing state. That's a cost for us.
Yeah, that's why I think during that due diligence period, we hope to set that. We hope to get that nailed down.
All this tells us, the document we have tonight, all this tells us is that they want to buy the building for a little bit more than we paid for it. But we need to know what that reuse is, what it's going to look like, whether it's going to pay tax, how much it's going to roughly be worth. We put the theater folks through all of those hoops.
All good points to this is...
I want to talk about that in closed session, because I think we have the cart way before the horse. You don't divest yourself of an asset. I mean, we wouldn't close the deal on Urban Street Bistro until all their ducks were in a row. We weren't going to give up that asset until we knew they were ready to rock and roll and what it was going to be. Yet we propose to sell this property.
No,
way
we're not
before.
proposing anything. Just to be clear, we received a letter of intent, and, I think it's a positive step, from a staff perspective, right, that we have a dialogue about it, and so now we're having that discussion. I don't want to be,
But I want to be clear that
we're not putting anything before any horses.
No, but
We
I
are
want to be
having
clear
good
that
dialogue.
anyone that thinks they're going to get a yes vote from me in here about getting rid of that building for a use, either here or at council, needs to tell me ahead of time what it's going to be and what it's going to be worth. And I feel like that I have so many questions yet. I can't even talk about the idea of selling this property because I have no idea what the use is going to be.
That's correct. Just to clarify, the administration is of the thought that, look, we have taken on the challenge of Sears for a specific reason, right? Because we saw a path to redevelop it, and we saw the need for us to participate in that. If that path isn't possible anymore or isn't necessary, and the private sector wants to redevelop it, we're saying that is also, it's also worthy of consideration. And I think that's what the administration. I don't mean to speak for the mayor,
No,
but I'm saying that's what the administration is saying. And you're right. It's a valid debate for the council to grapple with that. What does cost of control mean? What does it mean to continue to hold the property versus allowing the market to buy it, which is what we've been presented with this offer.
Look at how long we sat on the federal building. I mean, and whether or not we sat on that too long and whether or not we ever should have owned it is probably a debate for a different day.
You can always debate it, yeah.
Right, but we had a specific strategy in mind to either redevelop or repurpose the mall and either find a partner who could do it or whatever. But we've not heard yet. I mean, we know that the theater deal with Micon fell through, but we've been looking for that effective reuse. None of us in here, in this committee, has had serious urgency to get rid of the property for just anything. We're looking for something that complements our downtown, and we want that project to be special and be some type of catalyst for other things in that area. We just completed a planning process for what that area might be, with or without a mall on it.
Sure.
And none of that has even borne fruit yet. And
well, I think this actually is the bearing of fruit in some regard. The developer was very open that, following the market study, they felt, and Vic can chime in, but, they felt that the recommendations from the market study were very interesting and that they, thought that the housing components that were talked about, in the market study kind of inspired them to kind of look twice at it. And obviously, as a commercial developer, they also feel like, well, either we could reposition it as a current landlord and tenant it, or we could redevelop it into housing, and the housing would be marketable, would make sense. So I think receiving proposals from developers following the completion of the plan process is the definition of some amount of fruit. Now, it's not to say that we agree to it or don't agree to it, but I think I would look at it that way.
I think the discussion that we need to have, though, is that if we had put out an RFP and all we got was an offer to purchase with as much information as we have here, we wouldn't even be talking about considering it because we don't know enough.
Sure.
And I still feel like we don't know enough. If this proposal or this request to purchase came with some type of design and at least an outline of a plan, it would be a whole lot more understandable. I mean, right now, we and the public and everyone else involved, we don't know enough. And that's why I struggle.
No, that's good advice. We've shared the same with the developer. I think it's a question of timing, whether you do that after you signal whether kind of the general sales is again, it's important to kind of say, yes, you can go down the road of representing this property to whoever. Currently, we own the property, and we could represent it ourselves, which we have, but. There is some merit or valid discussion to say, where that goes. And of course, I think there's an understanding that, before the close of the property, we have a more specific idea about what's going to go on at the site. But
we've had some expressed interest from other direction, not in the form of a formal proposal that we've addressed, but It's not like there's nobody else interested, and matter of fact, the expressed interest, had an expressed goal and use in mind. I would ask the representative from Lockery, obviously, to me, in considering this purchase, that you must have an A, B, and C option at the top of your list of uses that you're proposing and considering for this. I don't think it's like, that's everything under the sun. I imagine it has to be something related to residential. It might be something related to a mixed use that includes some recreational. At the very least, if we had some kind of inkling about what the options are that you're weighing or the hybrid uses you're thinking
Sure.
of, that would be quite helpful to us, because as you can see right now, it seems like we're just sort of a...
Right. No, I understand. We didn't have specifics in there because we still have to dive into this. We need about 9 months to do this. We've looked at, obviously, if a retailer could go in there, that'd be great. We looked at taking the building down, residential, mixed use. We looked at using parts of the building. We looked at, or we're looking at, if you remove the center of the building, can you have a courtyard in there and then residential around the outside? So we're in early stages though, but we need this commitment so we can spend 9 months looking to see what we can do.
Mr. Peckham.
I got lots of questions. One for Mr. Schock. If we would go forward with this and the proposer came up with any plan, are we obligated to say, okay, whatever you want? Or are they going to come back and say, I'm thinking retail, residential in this combination, and we say yes or no?
Well, I guess the easy answer...
They're obligated to sell for whatever use they think they can.
No, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I guess that, again, we've received this offer. We can respond with any edits to the offer and say, well, we appreciate that. We want to have the final say in what uses will be, or we'd like a more defined plan before, within 100 days or whatever the issue is. And we've given, kind of thought to that, and we can, gladly take your recommendations on that. Again, we've not edited this offer or anything. We've received it. We agendized it. We're discussing it tonight, so we can edit it as appropriate.
If I may, Mr. Anderson, yes. Could you explain to a layperson why, what's going to happen in this 270-day, 9-month period, and why that's important that you have it?
Well, it's kind of like what Chris said. I mean, if we have control of the property, then we can go to various people, businesses, and try to figure out how this can work. We can also look at the residential element, which we would do in-house, and see if the numbers make sense, putting it together.
What can you do under that circumstance that you can't do or haven't been able to do for the last year?
You could do both. That's for sure. This gives us a commitment from the city to work with us, so guaranteed.
Okay. And then there's a guy way in the back there. I would like it if the mayor would step up and tell us what he would like us to do. Not to put you on the spot. Not a loaded question, just, you've seen this up close. You have been in on the discussions. What are your thoughts?
Well, ultimately, when we took this over here a little over 2 years ago, we had everything all set in place, and Lisa might be being a little more diplomatic than I will be as far as towards the mall ownership. We know about the saga with that. I personally think, in speaking with Lockery and everything like that, to an extent, I would like to know a little bit more as far as what's going on. But ultimately, I personally think, that we divest of it, that we sell it. I know there's some things that could be going on as far as the wall, but, we did in a good faith effort try to help them all out. We have on several occasions. I do believe, and I'll agree with Mrs. Rasmussen, that it is an asset, but the city has tried to do and take the lead here the last couple of years, and we do have a developer that is interested in it. If I had to make a decision or a vote, I would vote to sell it.
Okay, so selling it is, you're
It's
saying
contingent on some things,
we have
yes.
a guy here who's, more interested than others have been, and so let's work with.
Well, I've heard other proposals, and it's nice, and I say this respectfully, and I'm just saying this for myself. Some of the other proposals that I've heard about, I don't know if they're feasible. I don't know if they could be sustained for a long-term type of investment. Lockery is a very good developer. They've had a lot of success here in the city. There's been a partnership before. I would say that we move forward and try to work with them. I would almost say at this point, because the city has tried to take the lead here in the last couple of years, again, and I'll be direct, I'm going to put this on the mall ownership. Because when we took this over here about 2 years ago, everything was all set in place. We had something all set to go. And we bought the building on that contingency, if you will. And the mall owners ended up messing that up. So we've sat with this property. I still maintain it was the right thing to do, to try to get something going, to try to help the mall, to try to help the downtown area. I do believe that Mr. Lockery and his staff could possibly do something more at this point.
Thank you.
Mr. Gisselman, did you have your hand up?
Well, I think for them to move forward with any degree of spending money on their part, I think they do need some commitment from the city, with regard to some commitment, and I think that that's a very valid point. I think it is set. I think I'm ready to, to move on and see what we can do with this proposal. I know that this isn't the final product. This isn't the final selling agreement, and I know that there's more talk to be had, I'm sure. But I think that at least we've sat now with this for a while, and I think it's time now to move on. I think the citizens are anxious to have this building developed, and I look forward to seeing what we can do with it, and I look forward to seeing what the final project agreement would be like. But I think I'm in favor at this point in time of let's see where we go with this, and I think that now is the time to move forward with this Sears building.
I would agree wholeheartedly with what Mr. Gisselman stated.
Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. Let me say that I think that buying Sears when we bought it was a great idea, and I think still that it's a viable asset. I think that as whether or not that area continues to be a mall, I think that site has potential, and it's in a prime location. And I think it's incumbent upon us from a planning perspective to make sure that anything that happens in those areas are the highest and best land use possible. And that said, we were committed to making sure that we had a fantastic reuse for that land before we would give it up when we bought it. Now, because the theater fell through, we seem to be urgently trying to get rid of it just to get rid of it because the mall owner hasn't made a move. Whether they make a move or not, I've never in 11 years on this council had any developer come to us and ask us to commit to any type of project or partnership with no clue what it's going to be. They at least come in with a concept. There's not even a concept here. You're being asked to give up a very large building connected to public parking. And, I mean, let's be clear. The reason they want you to commit is because whatever that plan is, as long as it doesn't need to be rezoned, you're not going to have a whole lot of control. So you're going to give up the building for what? All I want to know is for what? They don't even know. For what? It's like taking a leap of blind faith. And I think that we need to be willing to wait for at least a plan. I'm not saying a better plan because I don't even know what this is yet. But we have never been asked before to give up what now is a asset with no firm, I'm not even a concept. If I vote for this, I can't even walk out of here and tell anybody what I know, what it's going to be, because I don't know either. I mean, that seems like we've not done our homework.
I would disagree with you, though, as far as saying that we're trying to get rid of this building urgently. Obviously, we've sat on it for some time now. Let me out.
Sorry. It was an accident. Sorry.
That's
Freudian.
Seriously, Freudian, there you go. But no, I would not say that we're getting rid of this asset urgently. I'm just saying that at this point, let somebody else pick up the ball. Maybe they can do something differently with it than what we could.
You know, it's symbolically apt that I'm right here in the middle, physically, but I'm also in the middle in terms of the discussion right now. I'm leaning this way and I'm leaning that way. When we talk about highest and best use, that's going to be your ideal, that's going to be your ultimate, wish and goal. We also know that reality often brings us a darn good use that's not the highest and best, perhaps. I would ask Mr. Anderson if he could, come back to the podium. The Lockley Group knows, what our stated vision for downtown has been for some years now. You've sat and watched a lot of the things, a lot of the discussions, the opportunities that came and went, but you've probably internalized what it was we were trying to accomplish downtown, and that is something that fits in with our vision. What we're trying to accomplish down there is something that attracts people, creates excitement, increases traffic, brings money, adds aesthetic interest, even adds something for the public as they walk by or engage with. So, we have a pretty clearly stated goal. Now, but it doesn't have to be, it must be a movie theater, or it must be this, or it must be that.
Right.
And I harken back to what I kind of mentioned earlier to you, is that I'm pretty confident that your outfit is looking at this, you're envisioning a variety of what-ifs.
Sure.
It's not a completely just, open, it's not going to be a warehouse.
No.
Or something. Can you tell us, before we go into closed session to discuss further, do you feel 100% confident that your organization has internalized, understands, and shares our vision for downtown, for that property, what we're trying to accomplish, and you believe that whatever you come up with is going to meet, if not exceed, those expectations?
Yes, we do. Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, that's our ultimate goal, is to do exactly what the city has been wanting to do down there. Keep it vibrant, keep things going. I mean, the mall was the big attraction for a long time, and then other things happened around it, and now the mall's gone, but the other things around it are still vibrant and still exciting, the square, everything. So we share the same vision, and what we would put there, the goal is to keep it so that the city downtown can be as vibrant as it should be, and more in the future.
Very good, thank you. Anything else from the committee?
I guess the only other comment I would offer is that obviously there's not competing proposals for the property. It isn't going anywhere fast, it hasn't been. And the idea that there's not 9 months that we could sit on that property and wait for a project to come along, I mean, if we're not in a hurry to get rid of it, I think that for us to commit to one developer with no clear vision, no clear understanding of what that project and that ultimate reuse is, no clear understanding of what the cost to the city may be later for that wall. What if the reuse includes a $6 million price tag for public investment that we can't afford, or may not, or may vote down? I mean, I just don't think that, I think we're putting ourselves on the hook too soon, and that we don't know enough, and I think it would be irresponsible of us to commit to this level with only the information we have in front of us. I think this offer should have come in with at least some prospective renderings or ideas for what this is going to be. And the idea that nothing can happen until we are on the hook, I don't buy that. I've been on this council 11 years, and I've been on this committee for 8 of them, and I have never had a developer come in and ask me to sell off a piece of property on blind faith that may include a public investment, and I have no way to explain to the taxpayer what that is and what it's going to be. In fact, I'm appalled that we're being asked. So if I had to vote on it tonight, my answer is no, and I want to talk about it in closed session, and I don't want to seem negative or toxic about the project or the developer, but this should not be here tonight. There's not enough information, and this committee has been put in a terrible position because we're being asked to make a decision to sell off an asset that we spent $650,000 of taxpayer money on, and we have not one clue what we're going to do going forward. And I think that, to us, that's a failure of due diligence on our part if we go ahead. We just don't have enough information, and there's no reason that we should make a decision without that information. It's not fair, especially if we've spent tax money to acquire the property. We owe our residents better than that.
Just to clarify, I don't want to get in a, kind of a debate about this. It's not a match, of course, but I know my place and would never try. But it's important to clarify that it's not unusual for a letter of intent, to be part of the process for a developer to go out and flesh something out. It's been staff's intention and the administration's intention that there would be clarity on these topics. That obviously a TIF request would come with an application and a fleshed out project. Before the real estate closing, we would have a very, a better understanding about what types of uses would be going in the site, or at least a general idea about how it was going to be reused, whether it was going to be commercial or mixed use or residential. And I think that's very fair. It's what the developer intended as well. So before, I just want to ensure that the conversation doesn't get too far off track, because I don't think that was anyone's intention to decide tonight to sell the property without clarity. It's to move down a road of selling the property and to have a long period, maybe too long in fact. I think it would be staff's recommendation that we perhaps have a little bit less period than 270 days, which we were going to discuss, but that would be, that we try to move that forward or set benchmarks along the way so that we have a good understanding, okay, within, whatever 2 months or 3 months, we have a good idea about whether it's moving towards redevelopment, whether it's moving towards reuse, depending on how it's, what the market interest is in it out there, and I think the mayor's point throughout this process has been to say, look, the city took this on because we did have the ability and we had the opportunity to facilitate something. We tried to facilitate that. If we no longer have that opportunity, then the private sector has stepped forward to try to do that as well. That's not a bad thing. Obviously the private sector could have acquired this directly from Sears, but they didn't at the time. They have watched the planning process. They've watched steps that the city's taken, and now they're saying, well, we'd like to try to put together something that would be approved, and we assumed that would be a part of that process. So I'm glad to clarify that. I don't want to be too clear that it's not something that we necessarily intended to sell outright. The due diligence period allows both us and the developer to kind of go through their process and come up with what we need. But
the trouble is I think we'd have a better comfort level with it if you had asked us to list it with a realtor for sale to the private sector with no strings attached as an alternative. This has strings attached. I mean, we may be committed to a shared wall. We may be committed to partake or partner or be asked to partner on a redevelopment proposal that we've not seen. And so if you really wanted to get rid of the property and let the chips fall and let the private sector do their thing, the idea would be to just sell it outright as is and be done. But this isn't to be done.
That's also an angle. Again, we could have re-RFP'd the property, and that might be something that the committee wishes to do. We may choose to list it and just sell it, outright. I think this is a in-between step in that regard. To your point, I don't think anyone intended us to simply just list the property and sell it without knowledge about where it was going. We also didn't necessarily, or we haven't necessarily decided to do a re-RFP, so we received this proposal, and I think there's some merit, to having a private sector developer try to lead the process and, define. And again, you can edit the offer to have whatever hooks you like, to include. Obviously, we would include some understanding about what's going to go there before it's actually sold, and what the city ramifications would be. And really, the wall question is not so much a developer's issue, but rather our negotiations or discussions with the mall itself, which has been kind of a discussion or ongoing point.
The trouble is if you get too far down this path with anybody, regardless of who the developer is, a backpedal, if you decide that maybe wasn't a prudent choice or it's not a project you want, because now you've committed on some level, is going to have some type of repercussions, whether that's a legal fight with whoever you've committed to, or whether that's a cost to get out of it. I think you're better off to just not enter into any facet of a deal until you know what that deal looks like. This is it's like trying to trying to negotiate a deal with 40% of the facts. All we know is that they want the building and they want it for something. That's literally all we know. And it just pains me to make a decision like that when that's all we know. If there was a finite proposal in here that came into the meeting packets that we could have seen and poured over, I would feel a whole lot better.
Obviously, yes. I don't think anyone's debating that.
Okay, so, and I am pro-development all the way. And I want tax base. I want that property back on the tax roll as well. But I'm not willing to jump in unless I know what that's going to be. And I think that's why I think we're too soon. The reading of this seemed backward from the time the packets came out, because there's not enough. Normally, by the time we got this in a meeting packet, you would have had this whole thing fleshed out, and it kind of comes in as a, do you want plan A or plan B? And it's an easy decision to make. I feel like we're blind on part of this. That's why it feels wrong, because they don't normally come in this way.
Again, it's a unique situation to have a private sector developer, this development firm and others buy property speculatively all the time. This property especially, because of the wall question and because of some other outstanding questions, takes a bit of due diligence, takes a bit of negotiation that the city has to be a part of, because again, we're the ground lessor. Okay, so there are steps involved, which is unique to this situation. Obviously, another developer could just step in and say, "Yeah, I'll just buy it directly from whomever," and not need to sort out any issues. That's a unique role that we do play in that regard. It complicates things as well. But but you're right. I mean, anyone could come in with a very defined proposal, But I also think it's not necessarily incorrect, as Gary noted, for someone to come in and say, "I'm interested. There's a lot of questions. I'd like to flesh out those questions, and I'd like the right to represent the party or the property, to tenants, which is."
Here's the optics of this whole thing, and I guess I don't know if anyone else in here feels like me, but if the 10 o'clock news tonight says city takes the first step towards selling Sears off for $700,000 or whatever it is, and somebody asks me the next day, "Oh, you're going to sell off Sears? What's it going to be?" What do I look like when I say to that person, "I don't know, but I'm sure it's going to be nice"? I mean, we look ridiculous. And I mean, that's the reality of how we're going to look in public if we commit to a project and somebody goes, "Well, what is Sears going to be?" I don't know. Because that's what I feel like I'd have to say.
I fully hope that we as a committee do not act. I hope there will be no motion on the floor after our closed session in terms of yaying or naying this request. I hope that coming out of closed session, we are giving a list of needs to staff to take to the proposer that has to come back with I's and T's crossed answers, even if they are a limited number of options. Excuse me. to give us something that's, I think, votable. So I kind of like to leave it at that, and we will go into closed session and discuss this and come out with what we're going to be deciding. So, anything else from the committee? Ms. Ryan. Again, please keep your comment brief.
Deborah Ryan, 702 Elm. Back in the 80s, I worked in Chicago for a not-for-profit, Thresholds, who seemed to do the same thing. They would go to different communities around suburban Chicago, not disclose anything, and they were working with schizophrenic clients and looking for group homes. Now, I'm not necessarily saying this is what's going to happen here, but without the information, are they building up? Are they looking at a disco? Are they looking at a club? Are they looking at some big bar market? Or drive in and get your beer? You have no idea. And part of it is that even with what parking you have, how do you know your existing ground parking as well as the ramp is going to meet their needs? You also need to look at what are the needs of the county and the courthouse and what you have obligated, and to kind of work your way back. This is the maximum you're allowed. So if you need more than that, you've got to have it on your own footprint. I don't want to necessarily scare you into thinking that this could be group's home or for those out of prison housing per se, but at this point, it could be anything.
All right, thank you. Let us move on. Item number 6, discussion and possible action on the development agreement amendment request received for the properties in the vicinity of 2nd and 3rd Streets near Short Street, the River East Townhomes. Mr. Schock.
Sure. So in the packet, we've received a request from the developer of the River East Townhomes for Phase 2 and Phase 3. The project has changed a little bit in scope. Some additional townhomes south of Short Street, and some timing changes. We do I want to clarify in the letter that there is no kind of additional draws against that loan amount, if that's confusing there. But we are in the process of forgiving the first part of the loan, which was associated with Phase 1. So we're working to do that now, and then to see the project move forward. And so essentially, we could welcome Jason is here tonight. We could talk a little bit about the nature of the project. This would face 2nd and Short Streets in the plan. So go ahead.
Yes, if you could just get your name and address, please. Thank you.
Sure. Jason Blanker Companies, 500 Laurie Street, Amherst, Wisconsin. I guess just quickly, you see in the packet just some more final drawings and renderings and plans for Phase 2 and Phase 3. And then I guess in addition to that, we're asking for a little bit of an extension in timing. We got started a little bit late and with our workload. We still feel we're on track to hit the original dates, but due to market, just making sure we've got a little bit of breathing room to be able to get this project complete within the time frame. And due to some unforeseen, at the time, there's apparently an 8-foot water pipe going under Phase 3, so we had to do some redesign on Phase 3 and had to shrink that project up to meet the city utility requirements underneath that piece of property. So we're just asking for a couple of amendments to our developer agreement.
So this will go to Planning Commission as well on the 16th as an amendment to the UDD plan. You can see, it changes up a little of the units. It focus on building more one-story units, which have been kind of very marketable. And these do add some enclosed or attached garages as opposed to the first phase, which doesn't have attached garages. So in general, the plan is, I think, a good mix of a variety of different types of housing. It keeps essentially the massing that was already approved and the architectural elements that were already approved.
Anything from the committee?
Thank you.
Alder Rasmussen.
Well, I'm going to shift and be super positive about this because I've been negative Nancy now for an hour. So that said, this is a building. This is a building. Look at Chris's relief. But this is a building plan. This is what we want. And
yes.
So when I have to say, how cool is this? Because even if it takes a little extra time, the excitement that's surrounding phase 1 of this project already, and just with the walkthroughs when the first ones were completed, the energy from realtors and prospective buyers, and even from us as project partners, that's the kind of energy we want. And I think that phase 2 and phase 3 are just going to be more of that. And if it takes a little longer to get there, fine. But I think this is a fantastic plan, and I think we should move it forward. So I'll move to approve those requested revisions.
I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Thank you. Yes, I'm also pleased to see that, although it's adjacent to the existing houses, that it takes on a different visual aspect, to give sort of the neighborhood a bit more of an organic look than prefabricated look. So I was quite pleased to see your offering, and I will support it. Anybody else in the committee?
A question. I see the map for the 2nd Street, which will be phase 2. What is phase 3, or where?
Oh, sorry, yeah. So phase 3 is the last map in the packet, which is south of Short Street, where the city owned the property there. There was a fourplex there.
Mm-hmm.
It's the last map essentially in that grouping. See that?
That's since been raised.
Thank you. So the 6 townhouses.
That's right.
So that would be just basically one unit. Then is that correct? Tied together, or
no? They're different.
All tied together.
They all tie together. Yeah. So there's 6 units there, and there's 8 units on 2nd Street. And of course, they all have shared walls, but they're all separate units.
And those all just pretty much face Short Street.
That's right.
From Battle Alley, pretty much all the way to the railroad tracks.
That's right. Yep, they're kind of from the alley. You can see the existing home is still there, and then they would put in a drive. They would put some garages in the back there, which would be used by the tenants of the project. Additional garage space, which is up against the rail line, and then the townhomes. Good. Okay. And this will go to Planning Commission on the 16th for planning questions.
Mr. Beckman, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I will have other questions at Planning Commission, but today I see that we're agreeing to complete the reconstruction of 2nd Street and Short Street, and I'm wondering how much of 2nd Street, and if that was already on our docket. We have a handle on the cost of that.
Yeah, we discussed that with engineering, and it is on the Short Street is not in great condition. We've been purposefully waiting to see the completion of this project before we finish those streets in that area. This year we're doing 1st Street, I think, as you might know, and then we'll finish 2nd and Short rehabilitation after this project's finished, and we'll work with Jason to set a specific date in the agreement.
So our obligation would be to do it pretty soon?
Pretty soon, yeah. I think we'll negotiate with Jason on that a little bit, but I think we were going to say within the year, depending on when construction's finished, because the paving years are, within the cycle of the year if possible. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Well, we've had a motion and a second. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None are opposed. Thank you. Appreciate it. I believe we have representatives of the Wausau mural project here, and I'm understanding too that they need to to split pretty darn quick, so I wonder if, let's go ahead and go back to item number 2 and see if we can take care of that discussion. Possible action on the murals proposal for the property at 1300 River Drive. Wow. So come on up, please. Give us your name and address and tell us what you got.
Hi, I'm Tara Drager, 3713 North 128th in Wausau. So we are back to present the final design of the mural. The artist just had to step out. She needs to leave. So I don't know that I'll be able to answer all the questions, but I think this was in your packet, correct?
No, I don't believe, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me, I can work to pull it up as well.
Okay.
Or can we pass it?
Yep, we can
Yeah, that would
absolutely
be,
have it.
okay. It's hard to see projected, that's why I was worried about projecting it, so I think it's best to...
All right, so a little different than last time. So what we did is we took the basic design of what the kids gave us, and we have a team of artists that work together to take all of their ideas from the workshop and from the idea that they had last time and come up with a final design. So most of our murals tell a story. They elicit a feeling. So we feel like this kind of spoke to that. The kids are really proud of the work of art that they did. They are photographed into the mural, which was a huge step of faith for them to actually see their faces on the mural. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
So the when the artwork is applied to the substrate, that is going onto the wall, is it being hand painted or is it being transferred somehow?
So the process that we use it's called parachute cloth. So we have actually worked with DC Everest Middle School during their mental health day to prime all of the sheets of parachute cloth, so they get a primer on there, and then we're going to cut the panels so that they fit, because that building is like a ribbed surface. And then once we have approval, we will project the image onto the parachute cloth, and we will do community paint days. So everybody gets to help us paint. It's like a giant paint by number. So it actually gets hand painted on, and then it will get sealed, and then it gets adhered to the wall that way.
Is that a nighttime activity then?
The great thing about the parachute cloth is the panels are right now they're we cut them 4x4, I believe, and so we actually can roll those up and take them with us and roll them back out. So we can do this indoors. We can do it any time of the day.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think I took it that the material had to be adhesed to the building before the painting took place.
No, we're gonna paint it, and then we're working with WOW, because the installation will take place on their patio. So we'll work with them during hours that fit with.
I'm assuming they're happy with the product.
They are, yeah.
In our last meeting that you attended, we talked about the other sides of the building and other plans. Has anything come to fruition in discussions of other parts of the building?
Not yet. We're still working on finishing this project, and then we have 2 other projects in the hopper. And then once this one is finished, we'll look for additional projects. There's a lot of groups that have come forward and asked to be part of this. So
okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Anything else from the committee? Mr. Martins.
Yeah, I remember when you brought the original design, it was quite abstract. And this is what you presented today is definitely a 180-degree change.
Definitely.
It's the energy's there, and I'm going to say that is definitely more energetic. And I think too, I know with the abstract nature, we were supposed to maybe project ourselves into those abstract forms of the runners, but I think with seeing real live people doing vibrant and energetic things, it feels like that there is more vibrancy there than the original plan. So I wholeheartedly enjoyed that for the brief
Good.
second I got to see it here. This,
Yeah, and they did add elements of Wausau, so we have the kayaker, and then they
Yeah.
have a sign with all of their favorite parts of Wausau, like the farmers markets and things like that. So so we did incorporate some of those comments from last time, which they really enjoyed. That this was like kind of a group effort. So
Also seemed to me sort of a thematic tie-in with our Museum of Contemporary Art, which much of its art has that realism, that human reality to it. So, Mr. Gibson, you were...
Well, I'm ready to, I think what we're looking for now is a motion to approve. So
Correct.
I'll make that motion to approve and move it on to, I'm not sure where,
Yeah, so it will go, good question. It'll go to, in theory, it would go to council as an amendment to the UDD. So we've been waiting to send the planning commission motion to the main council because we wanted to ensure that the ED committee also blessed this, from our past feedback. And so with this, if you choose to bless it tonight, then it would go to council, yeah.
my motion is to bless this project and move it on.
All right, do I have a second to that blessed motion? Mr. Martins. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None are opposed. Thank you, appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Okay.
The media might want to see it.
We can move on to item number 7, discussion and possible action on the proposal received for the property at 1401 Helm Street, Mountain Lanes. Mr. Shaw.
Okay, so we've received a proposal. This is a TIF request, essentially, application for city assistance for a proposed apartment and medical office redevelopment of the site. This will also go to Planning Commission for a UDD rezoning. It's currently interchange business, and this would move to a mixed use of the site, which would include an office and obviously a residential component with the proposed apartments. Vic, if you want to say anything specifically about your...
There's details in the packet too. There's drawings and things, so it's exciting. It's going to be a $7.5 million project, and we're requesting 8% TIF on the project. We're definitely locked and ready to go on it. It's a great location. The Mountain Lanes, everybody knows, it's been around forever, but it's probably time, to go and try something different there. An apartment that would look towards Rib Mountain, and that way, I think would be a great selling point to anybody that want to move and live there. You're close to everything on 17th and shopping and all that type of thing, so it'd be close to schools. It's going to be a great use for that property, I think. So just asking the city for the TIF.
Committee, it's your pleasure. Mr. Peckham.
On the TIF application, there were a number of questions that weren't answered. Number one, whether you would sign a community workforce agreement with the local building trades council, yes or no. There's a blank there. I was very pleased to see that you're interested in working with the Focus on Energy folks and the PACE funding as a possibility, but I guess that first question was the only one that wasn't answered on there, and I'm wondering where you're falling on that.
Oh, I see here. I would have to check on that one. I don't have an answer right now.
Thank you.
Anything else?
On the elevations or the designs here, or actually in your project, you said also a medical clinic or facility of some sort?
Yeah, that would be a building.
Or mixed-use office. Where would that be in relation to the apartments?
It would be on the,
Visualize that.
yeah, if anybody's been out at the site, it goes down a few steps. So the lanes are on kind of a larger flat area, then it goes down to another small flat area. and then it goes down a hill and development on 17th. It would be on that lower flat area.
Okay, so the apartments
The
are...
apartments would be here facing west, and the office building would be in front of them facing west.
Okay, so the apartments are on that upper terrace.
Upper terrace.
And then the office space is on that lower terrace.
Right.
Okay. Yep.
Ms. Rasmussen?
Just a quick question on the TID incentive for this one. On the letter that came in with the proposal, it said they were seeking a TID incentive for an approximate credit of $601,000 over 8 years. Are we looking at a reverse TID arrangement then on that, where we
Yeah.
pay it in annually rather than an upfront commitment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Very good. I see no more discussion. Ms. Ryan?
Hi, Deb Ryan, 702 Elm. I'm from the Westies neighborhood, and I had talked to one of the staff back, I believe, in January when the property was purchased, and had made an open invitation about when our neighborhood meets. And at that time, I was told there was nothing planned at that point. And I've left a couple of messages for Raleigh, who has not returned my calls. Again, that our neighborhood is meeting Wednesday, April 10th at 6 o'clock at the Labor Temple. And there seems to be a lot of interest on Facebook as well as next door. A number of people are concerned that it's not affordable housing, and that I understand you're trying to attract younger people, but when they first get out of school, they have a lot of student debt, so they may be paying hundreds of dollars towards student debt. And I guess for the one bedroom, it's kind of ironic. The square footage is about the size of Riverview Towers for seniors. So instead of paying $900 something a month, you could be in subsidized housing and overlooking the river and Fern Park and that. So I don't know how you're going to really be attracting people in the area. We do have a lot of residential homes. I just recently refinanced myself, so my mortgage is $450. So it's like, why would I want to spend any kind of money like that plus utilities? I do have a concern too that it's only 1 or 2 bedrooms, and a number of our households in our area are 3, 4. In fact, the one next to me, I didn't know was a 5-bedroom house. And so it just seems that you're working on a population that everyone is building for right now, and it just seems there's a lot of excess. And then for those that are coming in with children, what kind of plans do you have for a park or play area and that? And then in regard to the clinic, it just seems we have clinics all over. And when you look at the store that was approved with TIF funding a few years ago, the vacant section for Subway is still vacant. So is there any kind of firm commitments, or is this just a kind of a tax write-off? And I know our neighbors are really excited to hear more, and I hope our neighbors will be given that opportunity. Thank you very much.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
Now, with regard to the plan, and I like the layout of this plan, I think that there's probably room for the site on all this, but I don't see a parking plan, and with 58 units probably comes 100 cars. So is all of the parking surface parking?
The first level is parking. It's hard to see on
so you have
the plan.
enclosed parking.
So your first floor really is a second floor.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there'll be enough parking, 1 stall for every tenant.
Okay.
And then the rest is surface parking.
Sure.
Yeah, hopefully it's more clear. If you look at that east elevation, you'll see,
I see what looks
kind
like
of the
the garage
garage
door at one
opening.
end,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then, it sits on basically like that brick pediment, which is basically the facade of the garage. Yeah.
And we're working with the architect to not make it just look like a block wall or poured concrete. We're going to try to do something so it's exciting and looks good. And
This is actually a very nice design, and I think the underground parking is a plus. I think for that rent point, or that price point on rent,
Yep.
people don't want to scrape their car. Or, if they have to, they certainly don't want to scrape more than one. So I think that underground parking's a plus. And I think that, you know, we need to be mindful first of affordable housing, but I think we also have to be cognizant of the fact that we were grossly underbuilt on market rate rentals as well, that had a certain appeal. And so this type of rental unit won't appeal to everybody, but it will appeal to a certain type of tenant. And so this plan is an easy one to support. And I think with, you know, a lot of the impacts to the neighborhood that the last connotation of Mountain Lanes had, this is actually a positive development. I mean, it is high volume, but it's also not going to create as much of a stir in the surrounding area as, you know, what that bar was in its last days.
Very good, thank you. All right, Mr. Gissel.
So how are you defining market rate housing? And did I see those rates in here somewhere?
Yeah, they're in the pro forma.
Yes.
Was it $950 to $1,300?
Yeah, we have $975 for the one bedroom and $1,350 for the two. And that falls within what's out there right now. In fact, a little bit lower.
That's not high end in this day and age?
Yeah, sorry, market rate means high end. It means with the market, not
It
subsidized.
just means it's not tax credit to offset
That's right.
part of the rent.
Yeah, it means basically with the market, i.e. whatever the market demands. Yeah.
And really, market realities have a way of inflicting themselves on every developer and every building owner and every proprietor when push comes to shove. So, all right, I see no further discussion. Oh, okay.
I think I'm going to stand opposed to this. I think that the city in subsidizing market or high-end housing, I just have an issue with that. So I will be opposed to this development.
Okay, anything else? Seeing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? One opposed. All right, thank you. That brings us to our closed session item, item 8. I'm sorry?
I just had another comment.
I don't want ongoing discussions.
I
I'm offering
understand, Tom,
comment, but just
it's
comment.
something that he brought up after my discussion.
Please make it quick.
That for the city, you have been normally requiring 2 parking spots for an apartment. With the high cost of rent, there are more and more people moving in together. So saying 1 spot per apartment is very misleading.
It was
should
one.
be
It was
2.
1 enclosed.
2 for each apartment.
It was 1 enclosed and also extra not
And then
enclosed.
for visitor parking as well as for all the delivery. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, can I have a volunteer to read our closed session? Of course, eliminating the last 2 items. Don't all just jump up.
I'll volunteer.
Okay.
I'll move that we go into closed session pursuant to Chapter 18.85, Paragraph 1, Sub E of the Wisconsin statutes for deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. For the purpose of discussion and possible action on the acquisition of property at 2101 Grand Avenue, discussion and possible action on the proposal received for the properties at 1940 North 2nd Street and 2001 North 2nd Street, for discussion and possible action on the proposal received for the property at 411 Washington Street.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Mr. Peckham is our second. Roll call vote. Rasmussen.
Aye.
Gisselman.
Yes.
Martins.
Aye.
Peckham.
Yep.
And I vote aye. We're going to close. Thank you.
It doesn't help that I have my ears are clogged.
Yours now?
What's that?
I mean, I had clogged ear for
Oh yeah, my ears clogged, so I feel like I've been yelling all day.
Oh.
So even if I
Not
wasn't,
from a head cold or anything?
yeah, I had a cold, and it's still So even if I wasn't yelling like I normally do, I think it's worse than normal.
Okay, we are back in open session. Something came up just as we went into closed session. I think we had a procedural hiccup right before. This was on item number 7, correct? Discussion and possible action on a proposal received for the... Yes?
Yes.
Yes. The Elm Street Mountain Lanes item. We voted on it, but we're not sure that we properly recorded a motion and a second. So I would like to revisit that and entertain a motion to approve item number 7 on the agenda. Do I have a motion? I have a motion from Mr. Peckham, a second from Mr. Martins. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
And one opposed. Okay, thank you. All right. And then as to items in closed session, the first item regarding Grand Avenue, I think we dealt with that in open session and was not a closed session item, although we read it out as one. The second item, discussion and possible action on the proposal received for the properties at 1940 North 2nd Street and 2001 North 2nd Street. Do I have a motion from the committee? I have a motion from Mr. Gisselman. Do I have a second?
A second if I know what the motion
It's Bridge Clinic.
This is the Bridge Clinic.
is. What about it?
Approval of the concept.
As we had approval of the concept, not every letter of every sentence.
Sure. Yeah, I think
Well, we would have to itemize what it is that,
you could clarify if you want. Yeah.
what you want to amend the proposal some way.
Wouldn't the motion then be to accept the conceptual proposal and direct staff to work with Bridge Clinic to come up with
The final agreement?
related agreements? Yes.
I would second that motion.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Okay.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. Thank you. Next item, discussion and possible action on the proposal received for the property at 411 Washington Street, otherwise known as Sears. Do I have a motion from the committee?
I would move that we direct staff to continue to work with the company with appreciation for their interest in the hopes of bringing an agreement back in the future that has more specifics.
Thank you, well stated. Do I have a second for that motion? Mr. Bisselman is our second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
One opposed. All right, thank you. The other two items listed under closed session were dealt with in open session. So that brings us down to item number 10. Discussion and possible action on proposals received for the South Riverfront Area RFP. Mr. Schock.
Yes, in your, you recall from the last meeting, we included all the proposals received for the South Riverfront proposed planning process. We also we shared all of these with the stakeholders involved with that process, as you might recall, which included the county, the Farmers Market Board, the Wausau Whitewater Kayaking Corporation, and WPS, and asked them for any feedback that they had as well. Staff met to review the proposals and recommend accepting the proposal from Neighborhood Planners LLC, one of the 7 received for this plan this year.
Okay.
Need a motion to approve that, or we're going to go?
Yeah.
I would move to approve the staff recommendation. As I recall, they were very similar, so we're good to go.
Thank you, Mr. Peckham. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Do we have any further discussion on this item?
I got something.
Sir?
With, I know upcoming in the agendas, they also submitted a proposal for the towers RFP.
Right.
Is there going to be a concern with them working 2 at the same time?
No, I think there's, there is some, synergies that are positive in that regard. We don't necessarily mandate, the selection of the same firms, but if it in fact is appropriate or or seemingly competitive, then that's fine too. There's nothing that prevents the selection of the same firm for two different plans.
Also seems they gear up their team, based on, the needs of, whatever project they're undertaking, which it seems they've done in the proposal, the various people involved that would be doing the various tasks related, so. Okay, so I did have yes, Mr. Gisselman.
Well, can you reflect a little bit, maybe substantially, with regard to how the staff, came to this conclusion? Was there some strong points that we may have missed in their proposal, or how how the staff came to this?
Sure. So
I imagine this was community development staff as well as planning and
correct, of course, yeah.
Other people.
So I myself wasn't involved in the process, but our staff was, along with engineering and the Parks Department. And so, the staff reviewed all 7 of the applications, or all 7 of the proposals. I know that they, in a logical process, we didn't do a ranking this time, as we sometimes do, but they did kind of cut certain ones in an initial cut, and then kind of reviewed the remainders, and then decided that this was the best choice.
Was there strong points, or was there something about them, or can you?
No, I don't.
It's their choice, but
I know that I've heard, again, I wasn't part of the ranking process, but I believe the dialogue was, that they liked the proposal, they liked the team assembled, especially for this, for this analysis, their expertise with downtown planning, especially, is well suited. Some firms are more suited towards engineering or to other facets, but this is really a kind of a market analysis most of all, and they appear strong in that regard. So I think that was something that the staff appreciated in that proposal.
And then how do you proceed us moving forward with regard to this then?
Yep. So, obviously this is budgeted already. Once the firm is selected,
The budget number 2.
Yeah, I don't recall the time. It's like 40.
The budget is is it more than $25,000?
Yes. So I believe it was 40,000. So, and it went through, obviously, all the required, went through our public RFP. RFPs received and ranked, reviewed by the committee, and reviewed by staff. Then, once it's selected, we will sign a contract with that planning firm, just like we have for our other plan updates, like the River's Edge Trail and all other things that are ongoing. The transportation plan around the mall, for example, those same thing. And then that planning firm will kick off a public process. So they'll propose a schedule. Some of the schedule's already in the proposal, but they will officially kick that off and host events and other things. Yeah, I think this plan especially, we were thoughtful about really engaging the stakeholders. So there's the county especially and WPS are really integral in this plan, maybe more so than some plans we do, because in some cases we do a neighborhood plan or an area plan, and there's a variety of different landowners, right, that might own different pieces of land. In this case, the vast majority of the property is owned by the county and by WPS. So, it really is, they will be really involved in, kind of the process here, because they're the two major landowners in the whole area there, by far the most. And so, that dialogue will go on. They'll have the public plan, and we expect then later this year they would have recommendation, with a plan draft. This will go to the Planning Commission, of course. It will we'll also bring it probably here to ED, just like we have done in past other redevelopment plans, and then I assume that they'll be adopted, hopefully by the council.
Okay.
That's when I get my bonus.
Anything else from the committee? All right, then, on item number 10, do I have a motion to approve? I did have one, I thought, and I just want to recollect. It was Mr. Peckham, and the second was? Lisa. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. All right, then. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None are. Thank you. Number 11, discussion and possible action on proposals received for the Downtown Towers area RFP.
Yes, so we've received just one proposal for this one. You keep in mind, this is a very tight timeline to turn around a plan, and it's relatively inexpensive for what needs to be done. We were thoughtful about that. As you know, we pulled this together following dialogue with some of the parties related to the Skywalk and the future of McClellan, and kind of planning around 120 Scott and the Catholic block and all those issues. So we're very, it really has a condensed timeline. We need a product done, late this summer, really, because we need to be making decisions fairly quickly, and it's a little unusual. So I think it, that kind of scares some folks away. Furthermore, it wasn't in our queue, so it wasn't, normally we have the budgeting process and we have that, the kind of plan done, back whatever, November or whatever, right, where we kind of know the plans we're going to do, and some of the firms are already watching that and they're kind of planning their year out. Oh, we're going to bid on this one, we're going to try for this one, and again, this came together kind of quickly, so it's understandable why you might receive less submissions, because it wasn't necessarily on someone's radar, and we had a very tight timeline to address. But nonetheless, the staff felt that they were very confident in neighborhood planners, obviously, and that we felt that they could do this work effectively, and that this would be a good decision. So we do recommend accepting their proposal, and then just moving that forward at this time, so that we can start the plan process as soon as possible.
Well, again, I was impressed by their the breadth of the expertise of the various people involved that they were proposing to be working with. I liked the process they laid out, and so I would support it. Do I have a motion to approve?
I have a motion, but I'm just wondering if we could be reminded of the budget on this one too. That was like 10,000, wasn't it?
No, it was 25.
25, I think. Yeah.
They came in a few bucks under.
Okay.
They all come in just a few bucks.
I move that we approve neighborhood planning for this project.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None are. Thank you.
Okay, sorry for.
Yes, we're moving on. Number 12, discussion and possible action on the submission of a community development investment grant application to the WEDC for Clark Island. There's never any problem, doing an application. So.
Well, yeah, I guess I like your late in the day cavalier, but yes. So so I just wanted to keep everyone abreast of this. There's an opportunity to submit a CDI grant request to the WEDC on an annual basis. We've been lucky to win them the past couple of years. It's not to say that we would win again this year. We used the CDI grant to build the concession building, for example, and we will use it to extend Fulton Street. Those are two processes that we've already used these grant resources for. Recently, the Greater Wausau Economic Development Strategy Plan, which the city worked with collaboratively with the chamber on, made a series of recommendations, one of them being the potential restoration and reuse, redevelopment, if you will, of the Clark Island building, what's often called the West building. I don't know really why. I think the East building is missing or something. But so that building is has been vacant since 2008, and we see opportunity there. We have been working with WPS. WPS has kindly agreed to allow a planning period over the next couple months to analyze that. There is a task force already assembled, which includes city staff and local business leaders, the chamber director, and other folks that are already part of that process, and that group is meeting to talk about that. And we thought, well, it's all the details of the proposal for redevelopment aren't fleshed out yet, but there is a vision, and I think there's enough of a vision to apply for the grant, and we thought this seemingly would be a good project that certainly fires on all the main topics that the WEDC would like, redevelopment of a historic property, the potential establishment of a co-working space for local businesses, and blah, blah, blah. So seemingly a great idea, and so we're just, that requires a resolution of council to submit, the application. So we're just requesting that, that to go ahead and submit it for that plan. Again, the project is not well fleshed out yet, so we're not sure exactly how it'll all come together, but the task force would obviously be a part of drafting that plan when it does come to fruition.
So will that be a part of the submission, what comes from the task force, or does this sort of flow to Madison independently, so to speak?
It's kind of independent. There's certain discrete infrastructure issues that's something the city can participate on, no matter what the reuse or what the plan is for the building. And so we feel like making the application now is timely and appropriate. The window for making the application is now, so we can't wait for a kind of very defined plan to come together. And if a plan doesn't come together, we can always not use it. But I think it just was a real opportunity to make the application.
Do you, separate from the chamber task force, do you have your own vision, so to speak, with regard to Clark's Island and the powerhouse?
I have a lot of visions. They usually get me in trouble, though. Yeah. So, I think it's we've been very supportive. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I don't know if I need it today, but I do, we've been very supportive of the, preservation of the power building and hopefully its redevelopment. I think it's an asset to the whole community, and we were hearkened to see that the regional plan really jumped on it, and kind of the planners who were here saw that building and said, you have to, this is important for the community to preserve it. Of course, we always agree with that. We have stepped forward to preserve the Wausau Club when people said tear it down. We stepped forward to preserve Savo Supply when people said it's worthless, tear it down. That's what we do. I think there's real merit to doing that. And then not even to mention, the depot's restoration and the Whitewater Music Hall project at the Masons, all projects that the city supports and that really are so important for the future. So a co-working space seems to be a good idea at that location. Again, that team has to flesh out whether it's possible and what the actual structure is going to be, who is going to run it, who's going to be the tenants, how is it going to operate. It's not necessarily rocket science because there are many shared working spaces in places across the country. We have our own incubator that's already essentially a shared working space. This would just be a more urban focused version of that, not manufacturing focused, but rather a different sector of the economy focused. So I think all that can be worked out. Is that an easy answer?
I think if we had a motion to apply for this grant and it came from Mr. Gisselman, it would assure its passage at council. Suggest we go that route.
I'll make that motion if you want.
There you go.
Second that. Thank you.
Excellent, all right. Anything else? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None are opposed. And it's project update time.
Yes. Well, it saved the fun for last. So, as you know, on the Parkway 52 project, the staff recommended the selection of heirs, which I believe went to SISM, and so I think they've now been selected, and heirs associates will start the planning process for the Parkway 52 design. And then, depending on their plan, then that would be bid out and the improvements implemented should you decide to implement them. Should the SISM committee and the council decide that. So we won't keep this on here. I just wanted to be sure we closed the circle on that and everyone knows that was kind of going forward. So heirs is kicking off that public planning process, and they'll be doing that soon. I think there's actually a kickoff meeting for that plan next week. On the mall, we've obviously we're in a waiting period now for our 3-month extension related to the percentage rent. Our lawyers have spoken with their attorney. Our attorneys have spoken to their attorneys, and we are working to move that forward. As you know, things never seem to move fast with them all, so we're hopeful that they do make a proposal sooner than later, so that it can be agendized for the committee's review and then council review related to the percentage rent question. Good. As for Westside Battery, we are in continued discussions with Urban Street Bistro. Things are continuing to move. They've reiterated to me, they said to please communicate to the committee that no one is more anxious than they are to see the project come to fruition, but they're still working on it. Clint was hopeful to be here tonight, but he was delayed. He's in transit back from a spring break trip. He will come to a future meeting. I'm thinking probably our May meeting, where we will formally approve the change in the acquisition price to reflect the taxes for tax year 2018 as well. And then that would go to council, and then we would schedule a real estate close to be simultaneous with his business loan closing, and we hope that can happen, in potentially in May, or as soon as possible. Obviously, these type of projects, stall a bit in the winter anyways, because really it's the spring when they're going to really get in earnest about doing major renovation work. So it seems timely anyways to kind of get it wrapped up now. So we wanted to share positive news that we've now closed 55, right? 56 Live It Up loans in the city. It's quite an achievement. 56 employees have been assisted by the partnership, which of course includes donations from employers and from, of course, the city's major contribution to that pot as well. Tara, of course, works closely with each and every one of them, which is great. And she asks for, we obviously do pictures often, as you know, and we also ask for testimonials, and so they have provided these testimonials to the committee to share with you and to thank you mainly for your support of the program and its kind of continued success. Okay. The strategy plan, I kind of already alluded to it, but we were obviously part of that process. I know, I don't want to speak for the mayor, but I think that we were hearkened to see many of the things that the city was already doing incorporated into the strategy document itself. It really hit home about how important it is for these projects in the city that really are broader than just the city, and so the plan, which is a regional plan, really reinforced that things like diversification of housing, placemaking, tackling the mall, those kind of things are, continuing to do the redevelopment of the riverfront are not just important for the future of the city, but very important for the competitiveness economically of the entire region. So I know, we were pleased to be a part of that process, and I know the mayor was very pleased to see, the results of that. That plan is out there on the Chamber's website now if you haven't seen it, but I think it reiterates a lot of the things that we're already tackling, and hopefully, I think buttresses private sector support for the city's investments in these type of things.
And further utilizing the designation of Wausau region as a descriptor, I think is important.
Yeah, they really reiterated that, about how important it is to look at Wausau as a region, and the city being the heart of the region, an important piece of that. So we're glad to see that. If you keep in mind, this is a draft, so if you do have, questions or comments, you could let us know, or you could let the chamber know directly. But we just wanted to be sure that it's part of our discussion, and that if there's something you think we can address proactively, or you'd like to include or change or edit or whatever, we do have a couple things just from the draft that we'd like them to kind of clarify or reiterate, and if you do too, just let us know. Okay? Okay, the River Life Park, obviously, we're working to formalize the lease at the concession building, and we will then, be working to set, Parks Department's working to set a defined date in June for the kind of opening, and those, kind of elements are, kind of actively being pursued. So that's kind of in the works there.
So the poured-in-place surface would predate that?
Yes, of course. Yeah. There is a date for the poured-in-place surface to be done. Hopefully they can meet that date. It's a little weather dependent, but they do have a date, and they have the contractor is in theory planning to do that and be able to meet it. I think we're shooting for mid-June, but don't hold me to that. It's really Parks' call, but they're very cognizant of it. So great. And then River Life Villages Phase 1, we are still working on. We have not signed an agreement as yet, but we're working on the details of that agreement. Gorman has been working with investors, some local and some non-local as well, to put together kind of the final package. Again, there's sensitivity that they want to be sure that all of the financing questions and every contingency is sorted out when the agreement is signed, or as the agreement is signed, because the agreement itself comes with settlement requirements for both us and for them. So we want to be sure that all of that is is correct and finished. The timeline has not necessarily changed, but obviously we're in a crunch period now in the next couple weeks to ensure that everything is signed and ready to go. And if for some reason we're unable to sign a final document, we'll be quickly kind of moving in whatever different direction we need to go to ensure that there's a appropriate start, in the spring. But everything has been moving along, so.
Very good. And that concludes your update. Thank you. All right, then. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Well-deserved adjournment is my motion.
Okay. Do I have a second, please? I have a second from Mr. Martins. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We are adjourned.